guys, welcome back. I realized it's been a hot sec since I've done a college video. A lot of you will be hearing back from schools, or maybe you've already heard back from schools, and congratulations if you've gotten in. That's already an amazing thing. And so now you're probably wondering, whoa, I wasn't expecting to get into more than one school, maybe. So I wanted to break down how you could navigate making that decision, because that's kind of the tricky territory right now. And the good news is that you have some time. I wanted to break down a couple of things that you should definitely consider before you make your decision. Hopefully you've already thought about some of these things. If you haven't thought about these things, then there's a first time for everything. Why don't you guys just go and hit that little button down there, give me a subscribe, and definitely a like if you enjoy the video, and let's just get right on into it. First things first is financial aid. If you're rich and this doesn't apply to you, then feel free to skip to the next section. But I would say, and maybe you guys agree, that the majority of us can't afford to fork out tens of thousands of dollars per year in just tuition, but also room, board, and everything else. My advice would be to check your financial aid offer. Now, if you already filled out like the FAFSA form or whatever financial aid form your college had back when you applied, then they might already have attached an offer with your admittance notice. And so if they've done that, go through every single detail. And the big tip is not to consider loans as free money, because that is not free money. A loan just means that they're going to give it to you now and you're going to have to pay it back later. Different schools have different terms and conditions with their loans. And if you're like me and you've never done any of this before and no one in your family has ever done any of this before, it might be helpful to try and get advice from someone who has, or sit down with your parents and try to make sense of the paperwork. Interest rates are something to think about. And I know, for example, at Harvard, there is no interest from the time you take out a loan before or as a student until around 6 months after you graduate. So that's a really great bonus, but definitely check out the terms and conditions of specific loans. The reason why financial aid is so important is because of student loans. A lot of people graduate with student loans. I think on average it's like 34,000. I'll put the number here, but that is not a small amount of money. And also 34,000, when I found that number, sounds really low. I know people who graduated with a lot more student debt than that. This is something that you want to be really, really careful about, because it might be just an abstract number. I know my friends in the UK and also here in the US, oh, I'll just pay off this money later, it's worth it, blah, blah, blah. But quickly, like tens of thousands become hundreds of thousands, and then there's interest and all of these other things, and suddenly you have like millions of dollars of loans to pay off. Okay, I'm not saying you're gonna have millions of dollars, but it could be a lot, and that's gonna affect you down the line with your credit rating. I feel like I sound so old right now. Long story short, we don't want to take loans unless we really have to. So if there's a financial aid offer that doesn't have any loans attached and they're going to give you all of this money, really seriously consider that, because that is a huge burden off your chest for later on down the road, and you will be thankful that at least you considered that option. And when you're talking about financial aid between schools, if you notice that, for example, you got into Harvard and they are not going to give you as much money as Yale, which you also got into, because their schools are pretty similar, you can try and say to them, hey Harvard, I really want to go to you, but Yale is giving me more money and I'd hate to go to Yale because I really want to go to Harvard. Maybe the Harvard financial aid office will think about it and end up meeting you and giving you the money that you need. So don't worry about the financial aid offer that you receive on the day that you get accepted as being the absolute final one. There is room for negotiation, and I guess my biggest tip for you is to really advocate for yourself, know your situation, know the costs, and know what you're asking for, so that you can get help, because I would hate for one of you guys to not take an offer because you didn't think it was possible, but it was, you know? So definitely try to be pragmatic, don't let the numbers scare you, and definitely work on trying to negotiate something if it didn't go your way. After that, you can try and think about scholarships and grants and other things that you might have already applied for, or that you might be eligible for when you get your financial aid package. After we think about financial aid, the biggest thing is to really think about fit. So just because you got into all these fancy schmancy schools doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best schools for you. All of the next few things I'm going to be talking about are to do with how does a school fit you as a person. You've done the hard work, okay? You've applied to the school, you've done the application, you did the interview, and now you got in. So they want you, and it's a bit like dating, you know? Just because Brad Pitt is available doesn't mean that Brad Pitt is going to be your man. You need to have a look out there and see, okay, I've got these schools lined up and one of them wants me, but which one do I want? You know, make it like The Bachelorette. You can pretend that you're dating all of these schools and you have to pick one at the end of the day. I think think a lot of people might feel the pressure to pick the school with the most prestige or the most whatever it is you cool kids are using as a rubric these days. But you should definitely try to figure out which school is going to suit you and be your home for 4 years. That's the most important thing at the end of the day. I think that you should definitely have some sort of spreadsheet or some sort of document or even handwritten down thing that you put on your wall so that you can see it with every single school that you're going to, the financial aid, and then all of the other factors that we're about to go through as well. What this will do is help you visualize these differences. Otherwise, they're just going to be abstract floating around in your head, and you won't really A, know which school is offering what, and B, be able to see which ones are racking up the most amount of points. This was going to be a really good thing to do. Like I said, you can do it in whatever way you want, but just make sure that you have something you can physically see, because otherwise you might end up mistaking one school for something else or not keeping track of all the hard work that you're doing when you're thinking and researching about these schools. One of the big things I want to say is visiting the school. Now that you're an admitted student, a lot of schools have visiting weekends or opportunities to kind of get on campus and suss out the vibes. If you're in the US already, then maybe you can take a road trip. You don't have to take a fancy flight. I know a lot of my friends did road trips with their parents as like a bonding activity, and so it might be a good time to try and head over to the school. If you can't afford to go to every school or you don't have the time, which is 100% understandable, maybe you can try to visit some of the top options that you have. If they have a visiting weekend, there'll already be a ton of events planned and people that you can talk to. But if you're just going out of the blue, maybe try to schedule something with the admissions office ahead of time. Reach out to a couple of the resources that you want to know, like student groups and professors, etc. See if they'd be willing to make time to meet you so that you can get really nitty-gritty about the vibes and how you would fit onto this campus. And if you're not from the US and you don't have the means to come to the school, which again is totally understandable, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The good thing is we're living in this digital age, especially after the pandemic. And so feel free to ask the admissions office, hey, can you connect me with some students who are into XYZ? And that way you can get that student to tell you about campus life, about their experience, about the groups that they're involved in, etc., etc. And I would say it would be a really good idea to do this for a number of students, not just one, so that you can build a picture of the campus based on different perspectives. Although I would mention that if you're first gen, low income, or you have another thing that's really important to you, maybe you're South Asian and that's really important to you, or maybe you're interested in debate and that's really important to you, I would try to find students with those experiences too, so that you can talk to them and see how would someone like me who has this specific passion or this background fit into this school, because that's also going to be a really important part of your life on this campus for the next 4 years, right? And so you want to make sure that the campus fits you. Now, when it comes to your career, maybe you don't know what you want to major in, and maybe you don't know what you want to do. That's fine. I was in the exact same boat. But what I kind of wish I had done back in the day when I was a high school student, I wish that I had taken the time to at least identify a couple of the things that I wanted to do. I kind of went headfirst into undecided, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. I wish I had thought a little bit about, wait a minute, I really like visual arts and film. That's definitely something I'm interested in. Or I'm really interested in engineering and I'm gonna end up spending 2 years studying it. So those are the kind of questions I would definitely think about. What are your interests in general? And then you can figure out which school might have the most resources available for those interests. For example, Harvard's film program is tiny and there isn't really a film program, okay? It's just a little part of the visual arts program. But I know that there are other schools that might have offered me a little bit more in terms of a formal film education. I'm not ungrateful for what I got from Harvard, but at the same time, I wish I had done my research earlier. Hopefully you'll have done things like this ahead of time, and so you'll just be picking specifically from each school. But if you haven't, then definitely look into that, because for example, if you know exactly what you want to do and it turns out your dream school doesn't even offer that, that would be really sad. If you are unsure, figure out if there's some sort of combination of things you can do, or speak to the admissions officers, see if they can put you in touch with whoever's the head of educational programming to see if it's an option for you to make your own degree, a special concentration as we call it at Harvard, but pretty much a special major where you get to decide what your major is and you'll be taking courses in different departments to create your own plan of study for the specific subject that you want to study. So these are all some options, but definitely really important to consider, because at the end of the day, we are going to college to have fun and have a good time and explore different things. But hopefully by the end of those 4 years, you have a little bit of an idea of what you want to do, and you're not just left floundering in the sand, wondering, oh my gosh, I'm about to graduate and I don't know what to do. That would be really sad. So let's try and put some thought into some of the things that we're interested in. Another really easy one that is linked to career is also academics. If you're studying something that's really specific, maybe there's going to be a professor that you would really want to study with. And if there is a professor that you really want to study with, see how close you can get to them and see if you'd be able to directly study with them from year one or work your way up to that level. This might be a really important thing to consider as well if you're trying to go for something that only that school has to offer. So thinking about the social life and the extracurriculars that will be available to you is another really important thing, because like I said, you are at school to study, but you're also there to have fun and meet people who have similar interests. So are there clubs that you want to do? Are they offering specific things that you already do that you want to continue, or new things that you're excited about? If a specific school has one more than the other one does, then maybe that's going to be a deal breaker for you. And the other thing to consider is the social scene. Now, schools like Harvard and other really prestigious schools tend to have, I would say, an interesting ratio of legacy kids, and then there's people like me, FGLI, first gen low income, and it can be a very interesting scene. Now, I personally liked the social scene at Harvard. I wouldn't even say I liked it, I was just neutral about it. It just was. But I'm also the kind of person who kind of does their own thing. I'm not super involved in cliques, and I don't feel like I have to have a solid group of 5 friends all the time to feel happy and good in myself. If you're concerned about that, that is another really great thing to consider, because that will dictate some of your social life, right? So if everyone is going to be trust fund babies and really rich people whose parents all went to the same school, maybe that's something to consider. Maybe you won't feel like you fit in there, or maybe you feel that it might be just not your vibe. I know personally I would not want to go to a school like that. If there's a different type of school where there's a wide array of people, for example, something I considered was international student population. I knew that I wanted to be with fellow international students because there was no way I was going to be dropped in as the only international student. I think I would have lost my head. That was definitely really important to me. And so definitely think about the kind of people you want to be surrounded by. Social scene is going to be really important because at the end of the day, you're going to spend 4 years with these people. And so you want to know that you can feel comfortable there. Pay attention to what people are saying about the school. Check out current student pages. Maybe reach out to other students who are already there. If you don't know how to do that, then definitely ask the admissions office to put you in touch with people. But you can also just look people up on LinkedIn maybe, or just Facebook search the school and a bunch of people might pop up. Or if there's already people from your school who have gone to that school, that could also be another way to find these people. So again, referring back to that spreadsheet we said we were going to make, thinking about how many pros and cons does each thing have, and maybe the one with the most pros is going to end up being the winner. Location is going to be a really important factor to consider. For example, if you love hiking, then maybe a school that's already set in a little bit of a remote location, like Dartmouth, for example, maybe somewhere like that would suit you really well because they're surrounded by mountains and there's all these amazing places to go hiking and opportunities to do the thing that you love pretty much every weekend. That would be a better choice than, for example, going to Columbia where you're in the middle of New York City with all the hustling, bustling stuff, and maybe you're not much of a city person. I chose Harvard because I knew that it was kind of like a small college town. It's definitely not a college town, but Cambridge is pretty much dominated by Harvard's campus, and it does have somewhat of a campus feel to it compared to other schools, especially the schools that I saw when I was in London, which are very much spread throughout the city, and it doesn't feel like there's a true pulse of campus. The other thing about location as well is that you could find communities that you'd want to be really close to. Another example, maybe as a South Asian person with Sri Lankan heritage, I would want to be in an area where there's a Sri Lankan community somewhere around that. If that's important to you, again, look to the local area if you can't find it in your extracurriculars. Another thing to consider is also proximity to other things you might be interested in terms of your career. So all of these things are a little bit intersectional. And so, for example, if you're going to be going to school in New York City, then think about all the internships that you could be doing. Versus if you're studying something like marine biology, then maybe a school like Bowdoin would be better because they have a research facility right on the water that you could be going to every day. So location also plays a part in the kind of things that you want to study and learn about too. And when you're making your assessment of all the different qualities, you can break these down in such a way that maybe includes the fact that perhaps they don't have this extracurricular, but they have this location instead where you can get the same thing that you wanted from the extracurricular. So don't limit yourself. Don't use this spreadsheet as a way of ticking things off, but instead try to make it as representative of all of the opportunities as possible so you have a clear image of the school in mind. There are a couple of things that I haven't really gone into detail with right now. Things like the size of the school in a very general sense, like where in the US, whether it's a private institution or a liberal arts school. Hopefully you guys have thought about those things before. In general, try to think about those things too. Do you want to be a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? What does that mean in terms of opportunities to do different things? Do you want to be in a very remote area or a very connected area? Do you want to go to a school that everyone has heard about, or are you okay going to a school that maybe no one has heard about but it has all of these other bonuses? These are all little questions that you can think of. The whole point of this video is to do your research. There are so many resources online that you could use to help you make this decision, such as YouTube, but also Reddit is a great one. Going on Quora to different forums is a good one. LinkedIn to reach out to people, and just using the admissions office. Now that you're an admitted student, they have a commitment to help you make your decision and also to give you as much information as they can because you've already done your work. So please be sure to use all of the resources available to you to make this decision. Now that you have your decisions, please don't procrastinate. It can be really easy to just leave it off until the last minute and then be really stressed out the night before. And I would hate to see any of you in a position where you had to rush a decision because you didn't make time for it. So as much as you're happy to celebrate and do all of these fun things, really sit down with people that you know and that you trust really well. You know, have a conversation with them about what you're thinking, what schools you're considering, maybe any concerns. Give them the spreadsheet that you've made. Have an open discussion to figure out which school is going to fit you the most. Because like I said, finding a school is very similar to dating or finding your favorite slice of cake at a cafe. It's very personal to you. The people who know you really well, I think, should be a part of that decision because they'll be able to tell you, well, look, like you say you want to go over here, but this doesn't have X, Y, Z. Don't you want to go over here? They have that instead. Try to be inclusive of the people that you trust and that you know so that they can help you, especially if you're in a pinch and you're not exactly sure where to go. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have questions, definitely write them down below and I'll be sure to answer them, especially because I know a lot of you are going to be hearing back soon. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys on the next one.